presentation by economist.com on 2014 water and wastewater rate study and long-term financial plan for the district. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the board. My name is Dan Jackson, and I'm the managing director of economist.com. I want to start out this presentation by telling you what a privilege and an honor it is to be before you tonight. Economist.com is an economic and financial consulting firm. We've been in business for 18 years now. We started in 1997. The very first project we started our firm with was a rate study for the Laguna Madre Water District. So this is where it all began, and it is great to be back here to be servicing the district again. Economist.com was engaged by the district a couple of months ago to do a review of your long-term rate and financial plan. It is always a very good idea for districts to do these kind of long-term plans and reviews, because by doing so, it gives you the opportunity to make the decisions that you need to make, not only to meet the goals that you set for yourselves, but also to ensure that to the extent that any contributions from the ratepayers are required, that it be done in a way that minimizes the impact on monthly household budgets. We spent the last couple of months compiling the information that was provided to us from the district's staff. I want to thank the staff, particularly Minnie and Carlos and Charles and all of your staff for all of the effort that they put in to getting us the information we need. They were very professional. They answered all of our requests, even though they had a lot of other important and more important things to do. So I do want to take that opportunity to give a brief shout out to them. Tonight's presentation is to provide to you the results of our analysis and to provide you a couple of different alternatives for the district to consider in moving forward with a long-term financial plan. If I can get this thing to work, let me go to the view. Full screen mode. This should be, there we go. You always have a technical meltdown when you do these presentations. Okay. I'm going to start out my presentation by talking a little bit about your current rates and comparing them to other rates around the rest of the Rio Grande Valley. I think it's very important for you to look at this information, not just because if other utilities are raising their rates, that means you should be raising yours as well, but it is very important for you to gain a perspective on the contributions you're asking of your ratepayers. In other words, is what you are requiring for service to the district out of proportion to what other utilities are paying? I think that's an important question to answer. I'm then going to briefly talk about your customers and your volume. In other words, how much water are you selling and how much does it cost you to provide that service? I'll then talk a little bit about a couple of different alternative rate plans for you to consider, and then I'll summarize with some of the next steps in the process. Okay, let's first talk about your current rates. I like to start off these presentations by talking a little bit about what's going on in the industry in general. I think that as Americans, we've long been blessed by the fact that we have had access to a service that we literally can't live without, water and sewer service, at a remarkably low cost. Well, as we enter the 21st century, we will still have access to that water service, but unfortunately the cost is growing for communities all over the country. The average utility has been increasing its rates by 5 to 6% a year across the United States. That trend is expected to continue. As a matter of fact, the American Water Works Association predicts that water and wastewater rates across the United States are going to triple in the next 15 years. That just simply means that for everybody in America, water and sewer costs are going to be more expensive in the coming decades. Now, it is very common and I think very useful to compare your rates to some of your to what's happening in the state of Texas and some other surrounding communities. So whenever you do a rate comparison, it's important to keep something in mind, and that is that 30 to 40% of utilities in the United States right now have rates in place that don't cover their costs. Many water utilities, for example, are run by cities. Cities sometimes make the decision that they're going to subsidize their water rates from their general fund. Now, they're allowed to do this. It's legal to do that. It's not necessarily good financial policy, but What that means is that just because somebody else's rates are lower than yours, that doesn't mean their costs are lower. That might mean that they have just decided to subsidize their water and sewer service. And finally, many reasons why a utility's costs go up are simply beyond your control. For example, you try to run your operation like a business. You want the revenue from your rates to cover all the costs of providing that service. Now, the cost, due to inflation, the cost of everything goes up by 3 to 4% a year. When costs go up, you've got no choice but to pass those costs through to your ratepayers. And when you look at some of the key components of water and sewer service, things like chemicals, electricity, insurance, workers' compensation, all of those are going up at rates even higher than inflation. When we read the newspaper about medical costs going up 10 to 15% a year, well, what that means is not only does that mean that your medical costs are going up, that doesn't mean that your water costs are going up too, because water utilities have to recover those costs as well. So costs go up, and the prudent utilities deal with that by implementing long-term plans that enable them to continue to recover all of their costs of service. Okay, now let's talk about the district's rates in particular. We talked about what's going on nationwide. Now let's talk specifically about Laguna Madre Water District. Your monthly residential rates right now are about 40% below the state average. Your costs are remarkably low when you compare them to many communities across the state of Texas. I live in Frisco, which is a suburb of Dallas, just north of Plano. And I can tell you that we would gladly trade our rates for yours because our rates are a lot higher for the same amount of service. The district has not made a rate adjustment since 2010. So while other utilities around the country have been raising their rates 5% a year, which is 20% over the last 4 years, you all haven't had a rate adjustment at all. Now, another important thing about your rate structure is that the amount of gallons that you allow in your monthly charge is significantly greater than any other city in the Rio Grande Valley. For a typical residential 5/8-inch meter, in your minimum charge, you provide 4,000 gallons of service. Very few utilities around the state and around the country provide that much water along with the minimum charge. And finally, the rate structure that you put in place is what's called an inverted block. The more you use, the more you pay. They have been very successful over the years at encouraging conservation. In 1994, we helped the district implement its first conservation-based rate structure. And as you'll see from some of the data I'm going to provide you, it has really been successful in getting people to minimize their water usage. Okay, this is your current rate structure. For a typical 5/8-inch customer, you pay a water minimum charge of $11.90, and you get the first 4,000 gallons of use in that $11.90. Then if you use between 4,000 and 10,000 gallons, you pay $2.40. This is better. If you use between 10 and 20,000 gallons, the rate goes up to $3.78, and then if you use above 20,000 gallons, the rate goes to $5.39. If you have larger meters, 1-inch, 2-inch, 4-inch, or 6-inch, you pay a proportionately higher rate. The reason is that it costs the district more to provide service to the larger meters than it does to the smaller meters. That's why the rate is higher. The same thing on the wastewater side. As you can see, it's a similar rate for your wastewater customers. A typical residential ratepayer here in the district uses about 10,000 gallons of water service and sewer service a month. For that 10,000 gallons, a typical ratepayer pays about $47 for water and sewer service from the district. The state average is $77. Your rates right now are $30 below the state average. I think that's pretty remarkable. And I think that that is a combination of good management and sensitivity towards the needs of the ratepayers in this community. Now, let's take a look at how your rates compare to some of your neighbors. For 10,000 gallons of service, again, this is a good benchmark because that's an average usage level for a family of 4. Not only here in the district, but across the country as well. As a matter of fact, the national average for residential usage is about 10,000 gallons a month. Here in the district, you pay $47 for that service. You're a little higher than McAllen, Mission, and Harlingen. You're about the same as Edinburgh and San Juan, and you're significantly less than many other communities here in the valley. You're a lot less than Mercedes and Weslaco and San Benito and Raymondville and Los Fresnos. And once again, you're $30 below the state average. So, yeah, you are higher than a couple. Fallon, for example, they've got a shopping mall that is one of the largest sales volumes shopping malls in the entire nation. And so they get so much tax revenue from that shopping mall that they're able to keep the cost of their other city services down. Another thing that's remarkable is that you're not a city, so you don't have the ability to subsidize your rates from a general fund like a lot of these cities do. So the bottom line is that from a rate and monthly charge standpoint, your ratepayers are very well served by the rate structure that you've got in place right now. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your customers and your volume. Some of this is just background charts, but guys like me love data like this, so let's just go through it real quickly. Here in the current year, we've got about 6,100 water accounts. To no great surprise, the vast majority of them are 5/8 inch residential. But you've got a pretty fair amount of larger meters because you've got a pretty significant commercial base here, particularly over on the island. On the wastewater side, you've got about 5,400 accounts, 4,200 5/8 inch meters, and the rest with the larger meters. Now, when you do a long-term financial plan, and this, by the way, is a copy of the draft report that we just completed for the district. When you do a long-term financial plan, you don't just look at where your costs and where your customers and where your accounts and where your volumes are today. You have to look and see what's going to happen in the future. That way you can plan for the future. And one thing that you need to take into consideration is the fact that over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to have more customers than you have right now. Right now, you've got 6,138 customers. That's risen from 5,980 customers in 2012. So you've grown by about 150 customers or 150 accounts in the last couple of years. We're projecting that you're going to continue to experience a fairly modest amount of growth, about 30 to 40 new accounts per year, getting you up to about 6,500 accounts by 2024. Now, when we do long-term financial planning, we tend to be very conservative when it comes to forecasting future accounts. The reason is that if you're overly aggressive on the amount of new accounts you think you're going to get, and you set a rate plan based on hopefully getting revenue from accounts that don't exist yet, and if those accounts don't, for whatever reason, come in, and if they don't get built, then you end up with revenue shortfalls. I learned this lesson the hard way back in 2008 and 2009. My firm does a lot of work out in Arizona. And in Arizona, they were just growing like the gangbusters in the first decade of the 21st century. These cities growing by 1,000, 2,000 accounts a year. And then when the Great Recession hit in 2008, growth basically came to a standstill. And all these cities had done all of this planning and made all these financial commitments based on the fact that they thought all this growth was going to continue, and it didn't. And they got faced with a lot of very hard decisions. In your case, in the financial plan that we've offered to you tonight, we're projecting a very low amount of growth so that if another recession hits or if growth doesn't continue, then you won't be in the situation where you would have to make those difficult decisions. The principle is very simple. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. That way, if you do grow more than expected, you would have the ability to scale back any future rate adjustments. Okay, this is your historical and forecast assumption. Back in 2000, you sold just a little bit less than 1 billion gallons of water. That amount ballooned up to about 1.6 billion gallons in 2011. 2011 was a very dry year, if you'll recall. It was very hot, almost record heat. So, consequently, in 2012, 2013, and 2014, usage has come back to a little bit more normal. And as you can see, in the year 2014, we're projecting that you're selling just about 1.3 billion gallons of water. And we're projecting that amount will modestly increase in the future years. Now, it'll probably, in reality, there'll be some years where it'll grow more than you think, and some years it'll grow less than you think, just simply due to weather. I mean, if you have a rainy year, you're not going to sell as much water. If you have a dry year, you're going to sell more water. But the general trend is going to be slightly upwards over the next several years. And that's another important thing to consider when you do a long-term financial plan. You're going to sell more water tomorrow than you did today. Remember, water is your product. That's what you're selling. And if you sell more of it tomorrow to more customers, then you don't have to charge each customer as much. So growth is a good thing when it comes to a long-term financial plan. Okay, this chart right here shows the average usage per residential account per month. In 2011, the average customer used about 11,140 gallons. As you can see, in the last in the old days, in the 90s and the early part of the 21st century, when we did the previous rate studies, the average usage level was actually more like about 12,000 to 12,500 gallons. So you've seen a pretty significant drop-off in the amount of usage per connection, and that's a good thing. It means people are being more conservative with their water use. They're using water more wisely. They're not wasting water as they have in the past. And that's what you want to do, because you want to encourage your customers to use water wisely, and the rate plan you've got in place accomplishes that objective. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your current and your forecast costs. Because when you do a rate plan, you have to look at your costs, and you have to look at how much you're selling, and the rates are a product of your costs divided by how much you're selling. It's really not that complicated. Okay, a few observations about the district's financial portrait. Your fund balance and your financial, and your books and your finances are in good shape right now. I commend you for that. You've got a solid balance sheet. You've got a solid income statement. However, right now your water fund is recovering a little bit more than its costs, and your wastewater revenues are recovering a little less than their costs. Now, right now you're just about breaking even. You haven't had to do a rate increase in 4 years. But you're to the point now where if you don't do something about your rates in the next few years, you're going to reach a situation where your costs are going to start to exceed your revenues. So, let me illustrate that. This chart right here shows the blue line is your forecast revenues over the next 10 years if you don't do any rate adjustments. Let's say just because we're not going to adjust our rates at all. We're just going to leave things where they are right now. You see, your cost of service is your red line, and that's going to continue to go up. Right now, in 2015, you're just about breaking even. Your rates are covering their costs, but rates are going to go up, and without rate adjustments, your revenues aren't. And so, what is an acceptable financial situation today can very rapidly become unacceptable if you don't do something. See, that's why it's so beneficial to do these long-term plans, because you know what general direction your costs are going. That way you can structure a rate plan to ensure that you continue to cover all of your costs in a way that minimizes the impact on your ratepayers. Okay. Any long-term plan is based on a series of assumptions. Remember, a forecast is not a guarantee. It's a prediction based on a series of reasonable assumptions. I mean, if I could tell the future with perfect accuracy, I probably wouldn't be standing here tonight. I'd probably be off in Malibu or someplace like that. But since we don't know what the future is going to hold, we have to make a series of assumptions about what we think is going to happen. So, what assumptions have we used for your future expenses? Well, in the first place, we're assuming that most of your O&M expenses are probably going to go up by about 3 to 4% a year. Remember, that's the general inflation rate. The cost of everything goes up by 3 to 4% a year. So it's reasonable to assume that most of your expenses, like uniforms and things like that, those costs will continue to go up with the rate of inflation. However, what is unique about a water business is that you've got certain levels of expenses that are going to go up at higher rates. Things like electricity and chemicals. All of those costs go up at rates higher than inflation. Just gasoline. I mean, the price of gasoline has doubled in the last 5 years. And while I don't think it's going to double in the next 5 years, I think it's certainly going to go up at a rate higher than inflation. And you need to keep that into consideration. Now, from an operating standpoint, you have another large project that's sitting out there that's going to have an impact on your bottom line. And that's the Port Isabel Reclamation Project. That project is a very good thing. It's going to be extremely beneficial for the environment, and it's going to be great for your long-term water or resource planning. But at the same time, it's going to result in some additional costs. The reclamation project is going to result in about $300,000 of additional operating costs when the plant goes online in fiscal year 2017. You know that right now, so that gives you the ability to start planning for it. And that's exactly what this financial plan does. Now, another key component of any long-term financial plan is your capital improvement plan. That is the spending you have to do on your system to continue to be able to provide You've got a great quality of service here. But you only have that great quality of service because you have continually invested in your system. It costs a lot of money to build a water and sewer system. It costs a lot of money to build those plants, to lay those lines, to build those lift stations and those above-ground storage tanks. And like any asset, over time, those things wear out. They've got to be fixed. They've got to be replaced. They've got to be overhauled. And that's why utilities like yours have these long-term capital improvement plans. Your capital improvement plan is projected to cost you about $35 billion over the next 5 years. The blue chart right here shows you the amount of spending each year. The blue bar is your water capital improvement plan, and the brown bar is your wastewater capital improvement plan. As you can see, your wastewater costs are generally greater than your water costs. So you've got a $35 million capital improvement plan. Now, one of the benefits that you have as a district that many other districts don't have is that you've got a pretty large tax base. So you have made the decision that tax bonds are going to pay for a significant portion of your capital improvement plan. But they're not going to pay for all of it. Your rates are projected to pay for some of it. This chart right here shows the forecast bonds that you'll need to issue in order to pay for your capital improvement plan. You don't have $35 million in the bank. You've got to borrow the money in order to do the capital improvement plan. As you can see, we are projecting that in the year 2016, and these projections are based on extensive discussions with staff. So the staff has basically agreed with the assumptions behind these projections. But we're assuming that you'll do a wastewater tax bond of about $19.5 billion in 2016. That's not going to impact your rates at all. That's just a tax bond. However, as you can see, by 2018, we're projecting that you're going to need to issue about $5.7 million in revenue bonds. Those revenue bonds are bonds that are guaranteed by your rates and have to be repaid through the rates. As you can see, you're looking at about $4.6 million in water debt and about $1.1 million in wastewater debt. That's the bonds that will impact the long-term rate plan. And I do really want to emphasize this. The wastewater bonds do not, or the wastewater tax bonds will not impact the rate plan at all. Okay, so this chart right here is your forecast cost of service over the next 5 years. I apologize for the fact there's a lot of numbers on this chart, but I think I can kind of walk you through these numbers very easily. The first line over the 5-year projection is your forecast operating expenses. As you can see, your operating expenses in fiscal year 2015, the current year, are about $7.3 million. That's projected to go up by about $300,000 to $500,000 a year, to 7.5, and eventually getting to 8.8 million by 2019. Here's the key. Here's your debt service. Your debt service is, for your current debt, is about $670,000 right now. It's going to stay the same until 2019. In 2019, when you issue that $5.7 million in debt, your debt service is going to go up. You know that today. It's 2014. We know that's coming 4 to 5 years from now. That's why we're suggesting that you implement this long-term rate plan. So what that means is your cost of service is going to go from $7.9 million to $9.9 million in 2019. Now, you recover your costs in 2 ways, from your rate revenue and from another source that we call non-rate revenue. That's things like connection fees and late payment charges and inspection fees and that kind of thing. Your non-rate revenues are about $500,000 a year, which results in your net revenue requirement, or the amount of money that you have to recover from your rates. You have to recover $7.4 million from your rates to break even in 2015, and that amount's going to go up to $9.5 million by 2019. Okay, let's go through a couple of rate plan alternatives. Now that we know what our sales are and what our cost of service is, I want to address a couple of issues that were brought forth during the course of the rate study. One of the issues that the staff asked us to look into was your minimum charges. I'm pretty familiar with your minimum charges because back in the 90s, I helped set what your minimum charge policy is today. You charge a minimum charge based on what's known as an AWWA meter equivalency standard. For your 5/8-inch customers, you charge a minimum charge of $11.90. A 1-inch meter is the equivalent of 2.5 5/8-inch meters. That's based on the additional capacity a 1-inch meter can have flow through its meter. And so the minimum charge is supposed to be set at about 2.5 times what the 5/8-inch meter is. It isn't quite there on the 1-inch side. Over the years, that 1-inch charge got a little lower. But you see, from your charge of $11.90, 2.5 times of that should be $29.75. Your 1-inch meter charge is actually only $16. But if you look at the 2-inch, 4-inch, and 6-inch meters, it's basically equivalent to the meter equivalency. A 6-inch meter, for example, is equivalent to 50 5/8-inch meters. Your current minimum charge for a 6-inch meter is $560. 50 times $11.90 is $595. So that's the concept. It's not quite perfect, but that is the whole concept behind the minimum charges that you've got in place today. Now let's talk a little bit about the gallons in your minimum charge. We were asked to look at what is going on around the rest of the Rio Grande Valley. As I said at the outset of this presentation, the district right now includes 4,000 gallons in its minimum charge. As you can see, that is a higher volume than any other city we've been able to identify in the Rio Grande Valley. A number of Rio Grande Valley cities don't give any gallons in their minimum charge. They charge a minimum charge, and then they charge for every gallon that you buy, like Brownsville and McAllen and San Juan and Weslaco. Mission has a really bizarre minimum charge. Their minimum gallons are 998. I'm not quite sure how they came up with that, but that's what they charge. Los Fresnos, Raymondville, and San Benito give you 2,000 gallons in your minimum charge, and Harlingen and Edinburgh give 3,000 gallons. Nobody gives as much as Laguna Madre Water District. Furthermore, many of the cities that have a higher minimum charge than you have a higher minimum charge, and they don't have any gallon allowance. For example, the cities that give you no gallons in your allowance, like Donna and Far and San Juan and Weslaco, all have a minimum charge that's higher than yours right now, because your minimum charge is $11.90. Weslaco charges $15.62, and they don't give you any gallons. And for the record, we didn't do the rates for Weslaco, so don't blame me for that. For some cities, like Mission, they charge $9.22, but they only give you 1,000 gallons. Los Fresnos, Raymondville, and San Benito charge almost $20, and they only give you 2,000 gallons. And so, in Harlingen and Edinburgh, they're actually a little bit more competitive. Harlingen charges less than you, and they only give 3,000 gallons. The reason why we go through this is that one of the options we're going to provide you on your rate plan is maybe to ratchet down your minimum gallon allowance. That is an option for you to consider in this presentation tonight. Now, there's another topic I'd like to talk about just real briefly before I get into the final rate plans, and that is a minimum charge per unit. The staff asked us to look at the rationality and reasonableness of maybe assessing a minimum charge for example, a condo complex. If a condo has 50 units, maybe you assess a minimum charge for every unit, $10 for every unit each month. Now, we are more than happy to look at that, but actually, up until the 1990s, the district actually used to do that. Your rate structure that existed in the 1980s charged multi-unit and condominium complexes a monthly minimum charge for every unit. That charge was very controversial. Remember that, I guess I'm dating myself how far back I go with the service to the district, but it was a very, very controversial charge. One of the reasons it was controversial was that it resulted in a very high minimum charge for a lot of those condo complexes. You think about it, a condo complex that has 50 units in it, if you're charging an $11 per unit, I mean that's a $600 minimum charge. It also required the district to keep a tab on how many units there were for every meter that was in service. So you had to go out for every single meter that served a condo. You had to know how many condo complexes or how many condo units that meter served. Bureaucratically and administratively, that could be a real burden for you. But the most important thing, and the most important and charged a monthly fee. For example, let's say you had a condo owner that had 50 units, but 10 of the units were unoccupied. Very frequently, those condo unit owners would come to the district board and they would say, why are you charging me 10 minimum charges for 10 condos that are empty right now? If you have a house that's vacant, you don't charge a minimum charge for a vacant house, but you are charging me, and that's a...
Wait a minute. What are you talking about?
That's what
I've got a lot of customers over there with homes,
Right.
cottages.
Right.
They're never there.
Right. But
Don't
if
tell me they're different than the condo owners.
But if they're an active account,
Yes.
it depends if they're active or if they're inactive.
Yes,
If a
they're
home is
active.
vacant, it's inactive. And that means that that account is, and then inactive accounts aren't charged minimum charges.
You're trying to tell me the people that are only coming down here three
Still
times
paying
a
the
month,
Yeah. Those people are.
3 times a year are inactive?
No, those customers are not inactive.
No,
What I'm
they're
talking
not.
about is a home that's been abandoned.
Neither
for
is a
example.
condo.
Right. But you see, there's a
It's
difference.
not unoccupied either.
That's right, and you see, that's the controversial aspect of a minimum charge per unit. Because is the condo temporarily unoccupied, or is the condo unsold and not occupied at all?
Is the condo, say the same exact statement for a beach house?
Exactly right. And that's one of the issues that took place all those years ago. And that is that if a condo is empty, is it empty because the owner isn't there, or is it empty because nobody owns it?
Somebody owns it. The bank owns it.
Right. So that's why the minimum charge per unit was a very controversial thing. Now, you have the right as a board to institute a minimum charge per unit. That is, there are cities and there are districts that do that. But I wanted to put this chart in just to tell you that when it was done in the past, it had its advantages and it had its disadvantages. So it's a policy decision that you have to decide as a district. Okay. Let's go through a couple of rate plan alternatives. I'm going to provide you 2 rate plan alternatives. One is what I call the status quo. The status quo is a rate plan that implements a series of adjustments based on your existing rate structure. No changes made to the existing rate structure, just a series of gradual annual adjustments. The second alternative is an alternative where maybe you would consider reducing the minimum gallonage allowance per month. So let's take a look at the impact of those 2 alternatives. Okay, under alternative 1, the status quo, one of the key factors of this rate plan is that there would be no water rate adjustments before October 2017. In other words, your water rates did not need to be adjusted in 2014, 2015, or 2016. The first water rate adjustment under this plan would not be until October of 2017. However, it would require some wastewater rate adjustments. It would require wastewater annual rate adjustments for each of the next 5 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. So what the reason for that is that, as I said earlier, your water rates were recovering a little bit more than their costs, and your wastewater rates were recovering a little less than their costs. So what this does is this basically evens it out over the next couple of years. This is the proposed alternative 1 water rate plan. As you can see, this is your current rate schedule right here. There would be no adjustments in 2015, 2016, or 2017. There would be a rate adjustment in 2018, and there would be a rate adjustment in 2019. I'm going to show you the rates first, and then I'll show you a chart that shows what the impact is on an average customer. Here is the proposed rate plan, wastewater rate plan. As you can see, the current plan under this proposal would be adjusted in each of the next 5 years. So while there'd be no water rate adjustments in 2015, 2016, and 2017, there would be a wastewater rate adjustment in each of those years, and then there would be a combined water and wastewater rate adjustment in 2018 and 2019. Now, this would be the rates for your 8-inch and 10-inch meters. You only have one 8-inch meter and no 10-inch meters right now, but it would be good to put something like that in place in case you get some of those accounts in the relatively near future. But the key chart is this one right here. What is the impact under this proposal, that amount would go up by $1.28 a month. It would go from $28.53 to $29.81. In the next year, it would go up by about $1.40 a month. It would go up by $1.50 a month in 2017. In 2018 and 2019, it would go up by just about $2 a month. If you're a 10,000 gallon user, right now you pay $49.90. Under this plan, that amount would go up by $2.12 a month in 2015. In 2016, it would go up by $2.32. In 2017, it would go by $2.52. And in 2018, it would go up by just over $3 a month each year. The bottom line is this. The average residential ratepayer here in the district uses about 10,000 gallons a month. Under this proposal, the average ratepayer would see their bill go up $1 to $2 a month under this rate plan. Now, if you're a higher gallon user, obviously your rates would go up a little bit more. But I project that about 70% of your 5/8-inch meters monthly bills are 10,000 gallons or less. There are some that are more, but the majority of them are 10,000 gallons or less. So the majority of ratepayers would see increases of $1 to $2 a month under this plan. Now, of course, your higher meters are generally higher usage, so they would see a proportionate but slightly higher dollar increase. A 1-inch meter right now uses an average of about 15,000 gallons a month, so their bill would go up by about $3 a month each year.
Each month.
$3 a month each year. If you're a 2-inch meter, your average usage is about 25,000 gallons a month. Right now they pay $1.85. Their bill would go up by about $9.50 a month. And it would go up by about $10 a month each year after that. If you're a 4-inch meter, your average usage level is about 200,000 gallons a month. Right now you're paying a water bill of about $1,000. It would go up by about $42 a month. So, and same thing with the 6-inch meter. Their average is also about 200,000 gallons a month. Now, let's take a look at another alternative. I often like to say that rate making is as much an art as it is a science. You can put in a lot of different rate plans that will get you the revenues you need to fund all of your operating expenses and all your capital expenses. So the question becomes, what's the most just, reasonable, and fair rate plan? Well, the answer is it's the rate plan that you decide is the most just, reasonable, and fair. As I told you earlier, there are a lot of communities that decide it's fair to have no gallon allowance at all in their minimum charge. There are some that only use 1,000 or 2,000 gallons a month. So, suppose you were to look at an alternative that decreased your gallons allowed in your minimum. For example, for your 5/8-inch meters right now, your base charge allows 4,000 gallons. Suppose you reduce that to 2,000 gallons. What would the impact be on your monthly rates? For a 1-inch meter, suppose you took your gallon level from 6,000 down to 3,000. And for your 2-inch meters, you took your gallon allowance from 26,000 gallons to 15,000 gallons. Basically, it cuts your minimum in half. What would be the impact? Well, there are advantages and disadvantages. Like just about everything in life, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to doing things this way. What are the advantages of reducing your minimum gallon allowance? Well, it would result in the need for fewer volumetric rate increases. For example, as I'm about to show you, you would not have to increase your water rates at any time in the next 5 years if you cut your gallon allowance in half. It will result in minimum volumes that are a little bit more in line with the rest of the industry. You've got a very generous minimum charge policy right now. If you reduced it by half, it would be more in line with what, as I showed you, what a lot of other cities are charging. Another thing it will do is it will encourage conservation, because more of your charges will be based on how much you actually use. And finally, your high volume users will experience lower rate adjustments. Okay, a lot of advantages, but there's one big disadvantage of doing it this way. What that means is that there would be higher rate increases on a lot of your lower volume users. Because somebody pays $11.90 and gets 4,000 gallons right now. Under this plan, they would still pay $11.90, but they only get 2,000 gallons. And that if they use the 3,000 gallons, they pay a little bit more. And if they use 4,000 gallons, they pay a little bit more as well. So everything has an advantage and a disadvantage. This is the proposed water rate plan. As you can see, if you do this, you would need no volumetric rate adjustments for the next 5 years. On the wastewater side, you would need no volumetric rate adjustments in 2015 or 2016, but you would need volume rate adjustments in 2017, 2018, and 2019. Now, this doesn't mean that people wouldn't pay more, and that's a very important distinction that you have to make. What it means is that they would be paying a little bit for water that they right now are getting for free, and that's how you make up the revenue under this alternative. So, this chart right here kind of compares the two alternatives. Under alternative one, if you use 2,000 gallons or below, you pay $25.36 for water and sewer service. But under alternative two, you'd actually pay a little less. You pay about $1.11 less. But if you use 3,000 gallons, see under alternative one, you still pay $25.36 because that 3,000 gallons is still in your minimum charge. But under alternative two, you pay about $3 more. And if you use 4,000 gallons, you pay about $7 more. So what it means is under alternative two, if you use 30,000 gallons or less, if you use between 3,000 and 30,000 gallons, you would pay a little bit more under alternative two than you would under alternative one. That's the impact, though, of reducing the minimum charge or the gallon allowance. One final thing I want to talk about is your raw water rates. We took a quick look at your raw water rates. You're charging 48 cents for your raw water right now. We would recommend taking that rate up to 54 cents in January 2015 because you're not quite covering all your costs at 48 cents. However, in 2017, when the Port Isabel Reclamation Project comes online, that rate would have to go up a little bit more because those costs are part of your raw water rate, and so the rate would go up to 76 cents and then slightly up to 78 and 79 cents in the future. Now, I'm going to do my final chart. I want to summarize this presentation as follows. I know it's never an easy thing to do to ask people to pay more for anything at any time for any reason. Nobody wants to pay more for any service. I understand that. Times are difficult for a lot of people, and we understand that as well. But we have to look at a couple of very important realities about what's going on, not only here in the Laguna Madre Water District, but what's going on nationwide. Costs are increasing for water utilities all over the country. You have done a remarkable job over the last decade in keeping your rates down as much as possible, to the point now where your rates are 40% below the state average. If you adopt either alternative one or alternative two, your rates will continue to be substantially below the state average. However, you've got some very significant needs coming up in the future. The Port Isabel Reclamation Facility, the other capital improvements, the fact that your operating costs are continuing to go up. This rate plan has been designed to help you meet all of those obligations in a way that minimizes the impact on most of your ratepayers. The average ratepayer, who's a residential customer, would see their bill only go up $1 to $2 a month under this plan. The alternative is it's not an easy thing to do to adjust rates for ratepayers, but sometimes the best course of action is not always the easiest course. I think that this rate plan will help keep the district a well-funded and well-run utility. It will continue to ensure a high quality of service, and it will continue to enable you to meet the objectives you have set as a board and you set as a community. I would strongly urge you to evaluate these two alternatives and choose the one that you think is best for the ratepayers of the Laguna Madre Water District. I appreciate the chance to talk to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you've got this time.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone have any questions, board?
Well, I didn't see anything that would show us what our annual increase in revenues would be in either one of these reports.
In our draft report that we have here, we've got that outlined in pretty significant detail. I don't always put that chart in, just simply because the challenge of doing a presentation like this is that you don't want to throw too many numbers at an audience. And so, believe me, so the idea is that you try to get the numbers that a decision-making body finds to be the most important. But of course, everything we've done is backed up in this draft report, and copies are now available at the district, and all the information that you need is within the copies of this report as well.
Staff, does anyone have any questions or comments they'd like to make?
I do. In summarizing and pulling
taken and tried to compare different communities, how much of their tax burden is going to support the water service and how much of the revenue burden. And if you get so complicated that nobody will understand what you're talking about, this is limited to just the rate comparison. What are the monthly rates? And yes, I completely agree, it's not a perfect comparison because there are factors, and the fact that you live in a beautiful seaside or bayside area here is a factor that isn't true for other parts of the state. But it's very difficult to do a financial plan that takes that into consideration. How do you weigh that against a community like mine, Frisco, Texas? I mean, I live in a prairie. I get field grass in my backyard, and I don't have an ocean or a bay to look at. But I also have a lower property value. So how do you take all that into consideration? It's very difficult to do. So the best thing to do is just do a separate rate comparison, recognizing and acknowledging up front that it's not a perfect comparison. It only looks at one side of the equation.
And then your point also in bringing to the table about the praise to the board and all the good things that have been done. Way before our forefathers' beginning time with the water district, when the city and everything was beginning, you saw how many water acre feet rights that the district has into the future uses of water. And so you're not talking today here about needs for more water into the district. You're only talking about keeping up with the depreciation and the maintenance issues and the mechanics of the district. And so with that said, and like your prairie and your whatever environment you got running around over there, stuff like that and everything, so y'all also have to saddle in with your future water demands where you're going to get them.
Right.
Where here we have that advantage. Yeah. So that should be weighed into the mix too. So
Not really. We're at capacity with water rights right now. We're pretty close to capacity. That's another subject. But rates right now are obviously due to operations and maintenance are increasing. That's the whole purpose of this discussion and this topic and workshop is those costs are just continually going up.
Right, and we had discussed speaking on the water volume and quantity and things like that, where we had a mechanical issue here the last where you're sucking out of the river up here, and you were putting unknowingly for how long 20% back into the river.
Seems to me like dropping that minimum 50% is awful drastic. What if they were to drop it, say, from 4,000 to 3,000 instead of 4,000 to 2,000?
Sure. Would you stand up and state your name?
Well, I guess I could.
Be in a minute.
I'm Rick Wells, and I got a question. 50% seems like a very drastic drop as far as on the minimums. What if you just went, say, 25%?
The board has that prerogative. That's the beauty of rate making. There's a lot of different ways that you can go. I use the 50% as a good example to try to gauge and try to show the ratepayers, the staff, and the board what the impact of that policy decision would be. But it is it would not be unusual at all for the board to say, well, you know what, maybe 50% is too much. Maybe we just take it down to 3,000. If you took it down to 3,000, just doing mental math, you would have to do a little bit more in terms of volumetric rate increases. But you still would probably not have to do a water rate increase for several years. You probably have to do a nominally higher wastewater rate increase. But most importantly, the impact on the low volume users would not be nearly as high. Because that $3.50 that they'd be spending for the gallons between 2,000 and 3,000, they wouldn't be spending. So that's a very good point. And that's the beauty of rate making. You can sometimes just split the difference. Sometimes, and that's a perfectly reasonable decision to come to.
I mean, this is a sore subject for everyone to discuss. I mean, personally, I pay water. I mean, we all pay water bills. It's a topic that no one wants to discuss, but I mean, we are faced with some challenges. I mean, and we have to make some decisions. Otherwise, we run into the deficit where the operations and maintenance cost more than the revenues that come in.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Dan before we close? Staff? Anything? Okay. I guess we'll take a recess this time at 5:54. Take a recess. Yeah, we're taking a recess. We're going to have to call the meeting back to order. Oh, we do have to call back to recess.
Mr. Ortiz, how are you, sir? Awesome.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. Regular meeting. Notice is hereby given of a regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the District to be held at 105 Port Road, Port Isabel, Texas, on the 22nd day of October, 2014, at the hour of 6 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on October 16th, 2014, at 2:30 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551041, 551050, and a copy furnished to the county clerk at Cameron County, Texas. We do have the presence of a quorum. All the members are present at this time. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance, so we can move on to item number 2. Staff, board members, anyone like to discuss anything? Yes.
I'd just like to welcome the Laguna Madre leadership. They're here present today.
Pleasure to have you with us. Also a previous alumni, or a current alumni, so it's great to have you all with us. Board, staff, audience members, anyone like to discuss anything in open session? If so, moving to item number 3, consider and approve the minutes for the regular meeting of October 8th, 2014. A motion has been made by Mr. Garcia for approval, second by Mr. Vella. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
There are. None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 5, consider and approve resolution number 112-10.
Number 4.
Excuse me, item 4, consider and approve the district's new water and wastewater rate and long-term financial plan. We just previously had a workshop on this discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation, is that we table this item and come back later on and present it to the new board members
Okay.
after the election.
Staff has made a recommendation to table the item. How does the board feel?
So moved.
It's been a motion made by Mr. Vella and a second by Mr. Keplinger. All those in favor for a table?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 5, consider and approve resolution number 112-10-14, amending water and wastewater rate schedules.
Mr. Chairman, again.
Falls
table
under
this
number
one.
4.
Table this one also.
Motion has been made by staff, Carlos, for a recommendation to table. Does the board recommend also?
He can't make a motion, but we can make a motion.
That's what I said. Does the board make
You want to make another motion, Mr. Bennett?
Number 5?
Yes, sir.
Motion made by Mr. Vella for a
Second
table.
it again.
Second by Mr. Keplinger for a table.
Aye.
Are all those in favor?
Aye.
There are. They're none opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 6, consider and approve agreement for financial advisory services with Estrada Hinojosa and Company.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make another recommendation on this one. If we can have a presentation by Scott Hinojosa and table this one also for a future, probably next board meeting. They can make a presentation to the board.
I have a question to the chair.
Yes.
Isn't this something we're supposed to go out for bids on?
It's been a 5-year agreement since 1999.
Okay, well, the 5 years is up. Don't we rebid it at this time? I mean,
Well,
It's
if
professional
anything,
services.
It would be for qualifications only, no bids. Just
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment? Under our professional services policy, it requires that we go out for RFQs every 5 years on professional services. That has not been done in a while. I think we need to go out for RFQs based on our current policy. We need to follow policy. That's why we have it in place.
RFC.
I'll make a motion to table.
Motion made to table by Mr. Keplinger. Is there a second? Motion made by Mr. Keplinger. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of...
No, I'll make that second. Yeah, I think the new board needs to go ahead and review and go out for RFQs for the next financial year.
Motion made by Mr. Keplinger, second by Mr. Garcia. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Our full plate coming up. Item number 7, consider and approve the emergency pipeline adjustments on FM 2040 on 2480 for TxDOT road improvements. Charles?
Right, this is FM 2480 is where we recently completed that Quantas pipeline adjustment, and Texas has started work on their road widening project from FM 3069 to San Roman, and that's why we had fast-tracked that original Peterson contract to stay ahead of TxDOT.
Yes.
Well, the drainage contractors out there last week, and they were checking clearances and found two conflicts with our existing 14-inch pipe and their proposed 16-inch cross culverts there in the street. And so originally, with that original plan, this line was scheduled to be abandoned, but then when we started construction, we moved the alignment and kept this line in place. And so now we're at the point to where there's two adjustments that were never made in the previous two contracts. And we need to move these pretty quick so we don't delay the TxDOT contractor who's already mobilized and ready to proceed with their drainage install. And so this just came up last week. That's why it was pretty rushed, but we didn't have any quotes at the time that both had was issued. But we have received two quotes. One's from Cornet Construction Company, and the second one is from IOC, which is the TxDOT contractor doing the roadwork and the drainage. And so for those two adjustments at the drainage ditches, we got a quote from Cornet for $19,890 to complete that work. And then our second quote was from IOC, and they were for $24,800. And so, considering the amount of work that's involved, they're pretty fair quotes that we received, and we recommend award to Cornet for $19,800 or $19,890.
$890.
Question?
Yes.
Well, we've used them, we've been satisfied with their work before also, haven't we?
With Cornet?
Yeah.
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 Yes, they're from good work.
They're the ones that put in the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Good group.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas for approval.
Gotta hate spending 20 grand that quick.
Second. Second by Mr. Keplinger. All those in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? None? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 8, consider and approve the district to begin in negotiations with Port Isabel San Benito Navigation District and Sub C7 Port Isabel LLC to acquire the pipeline utility easement. Carlos?
Right, yeah, and this is tied to our, the past year, September 23rd, 2013, we had got our new permit issued for the Port Isabel sewer plant. And so part of what was written in that plant is we put restrictions on the amount of copper and zinc that we're allowed to discharge. Actually, the effluent limit got more stringent. So we're working with, and we also have some biomonitoring that we have to resolve because that forced us to have this wet limit or whole effluent toxicity limit put on the plant. And so we've been talking to TCEQ. We had our first meeting in August, and it's working in conjunction with Corollo's effort, on the reclaimed water side. And we're seeing the best way to address the compliance issues is to extend that outfall pipeline so we can go directly to the Port Isabel channel versus the tidal mud plant. And like that, through modeling, we can get less stringent discharge limits on our copper and zinc, and the wet limit should go away over time as we have passing biomonitoring. And so to get that line extended, we need to cross Subsea 7's property and the navigation district. And so I'm just requesting, the authority for us to initiate easement, talks with both the navigation district and Subsea 7, so we can start setting our alignment for this outfall extension on the Port Isabel sewer plant.
Awesome. Motion made by Mr. Garcia for approval. Second by Mr. Vella. Are all those in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? None? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 9, consider and approve the investment report for quarter ending September 30th, 2014. Belinda?
Yes, this is our investment report for quarter ending September 30th, which covers July to September. We currently have $17,312,682.49 in our bank accounts. We have $957,487.73 in 2C bills, which were purchased for a term of 365 days. And for those 3 months, we received $6,216.80 on interest revenue.
anyone have any questions or comments to Belinda? Belen, excuse me. A motion for approval? Motion for approval by Mr. Garcia. Is there a second by Mr. Vella? Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None? Motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item number 10. Consider and approve the financial reports as of September 30th, 2014.
This is the revenue and expense for September, which is also the end of the fiscal year. We budget $8,235,905 in revenue, and we, up to date, year to date, we got $7,459,181, which means we under what was budgeted, $776,724. But also on the expenses, compared to what was budgeted, we are under. So we have a revenue of $261,468 for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
So you have any questions, any comments?
Couple $100,000 ahead of the game. That's the end, almost the end of the physical year. That's
Correct.
good.
Good news.
Yep.
Any questions or comments? Motion for approval by Mr. Garcia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kepling. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
They are. Are there any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10. Consider and approve the item number 11. Consider and approve the disbursements. If anyone has any particular questions about a disbursement, we can pull them out individually. Otherwise, ask for an approval of all the disbursements. You have a question about a disbursement?
No, not at this time.
I have some questions.
Okay. You want to pull them individually?
Please, on page 7, and I think there was another page also I saw some, page 7. We've got some expenses out to Firestone. I know, our trucks need to get new tires and everything. Is the district, is staff going out for bids when they look for tires, or is Firestone,
Yes, we
just
are.
the one we always get?
No.
Do we go to
get,
discount
three
tires?
quotes. We get the 3 quotes if it's under $5,000,
Right?
and then we get the lowest of all 3.
Okay. 'Cause I know discount tires is pretty competitive, Pueblo and Brownsville, so I just wanted, just double checking on that. Also on the, I don't know what page, O'Reilly's and Padre Auto, we seem to spend quite a bit of money there also. Do we just buy as we need,
Yes, sir. In some occasions, well, Victor. you
or
can
do we have
answer that.
stock, or do we stock auto parts?
No, most of this is just equipment or material that breaks down on the unit that needs to be replaced, like tailgates or lights. We get some hose fittings or wipers that we need to repair on the unit.
I'm just wondering, because, when on my vehicles, if I can buy online, I'll buy online. It's a lot cheaper. You get good parts. I'm just wondering if maybe you might want to consider having stock of certain items that you're going to need, and you buy online, maybe save us some money that way. Just an idea.
The only thing is, because we're started having the different makes of models.
Well, you know what vehicles you have. You can just,
Yeah,
order
now we
what-
have so many mix match.
I know, but they know what vehicles they have, and they know what they're going to need down the road. And,
There's some things that are universal, like wipers and...
yeah, it's just an idea, Victor. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, we do have like oil and we do stock like oil and oil filters,
Filters and stuff.
transmission filter. We do stock that. That's usually that we do stock. It's just the extra things that come out that we don't stock.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you buy in bulk and have some stock, because it might end up cheaper.
Let me answer something for you on it. Once you buy something online or something like that you're not using, you put it on stock and loses the warranty. It loses the warranty in the warehouse or whatever you have in stock, Usually you don't want to have oil filter, something like that has no warranty, it's all right, but something that has a value of $500 or $600, put it there in stock, loses warranty. That's one of the reasons you're doing it, huh? Yeah, that's correct.
Any other questions or comments regarding the disbursements?
Just one.
Yes.
Lynn, on page 8 of your report, I'm just looking down at the Las Cuatas electric bill, $320. Is that the only Las Cuatas bill that I can find on here, or am I just blind? I found the Reservoir 3 pump, the river pumps, and Las Cuatas, but I can't believe that's the total for the pumps, is it? Can't be.
I think that HS pump is the bigger pump that we've installed at the existing pump station.
Where's it at?
The horse to the left.
HS
Towards the
pump,
bottom.
3,500?
Yes.
Well, that's still a long ways from $6,000, isn't it? Okay. HS pump. Okay. What is?
Any other questions on the disbursements? Motion to approve by Mr. Garcia,
Second.
second by Mr. Thomas. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
They are. Are there any opposed? None. Motion approves. Moving to item number 12, General Manager's report, discuss the schedule of events for the ribbon cutting in regards to our new microfiltration plant.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have, designated a date, I don't know if the board wants to do that or change it, but, it's on the weekend, on a Saturday, November the 8th, at about 10 o'clock, if everybody agrees to that, I would like all the board to attend this one, the
Yes.
ribbon cutting, so unless y'all decide to maybe for another day,
The November 8th works for me.
Okay, Saturday the 8th.
Saturday.
It's fine.
Is that where we're gonna get raised for all
And
the
I want to
kids?
send out invitations, and I want to make sure that everybody gets that.
It gives you 3 weeks to
Yes, sir.
start mailing out invitations,
Get some in the paper.
RSVPs.
We get to stand there with shovels?
No, we're gonna.
No, just, scissors.
Just
Yeah,
add
the
some
ribbon
scissors,
cutting.
okay.
There's no groundbreaking at all. Thank you, that's all.
Set for November 8th at 10 a.m. Thank you. Moving to item number 12, District Engineers Report. Update on the Series 12 bond balance update. Charles?
Right, so we can just, I passed out the spreadsheet just before the meeting, and so it's just an update. I formed that new column for starting off the new fiscal year, and so basically rounding out the end of the fiscal year 14, you know, in the 2007 bond, we had paid invoices for 1.37 million, and for fiscal year 14 on the 2012 bonds, we had paid invoices for 4.7 million. And these first couple of invoices that you're seeing under the fiscal year 15 is just the continued work, primarily on the water reuse, and then just what we're finishing up at the water plant too, which is tied mainly to the emergency power addition and you know the engineering aspects like the chlorine dioxide, CT study. That's the kind of stuff that's going to finish out the water plant 2 project. And so, taking a look at our balance, you know, we still have a balance right now. Right now, 790,000 committed to open purchase orders, and we have 6.88 million in our balance that's not committed at this time under any contracts, but it's available through Proposition 1. Any questions on the spreadsheet? Or?
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, you know, I was looking at the investment report, and it has 2007 revenue bond money there, right? Under the investment report totaling about $450,000 is what it shows on the report. And does that match with what you just gave us?
No.
As far as money, so I'm just wondering why is there a discrepancy?
No.
This one is at the end of September, and he already has some.
Pull this through October.
No, the 2007, this spreadsheet is based on the transfers that we had discussed with Robert Gomez as far as closing out the 2007 invoice.
Right.
2007 budget.
So I thought that was pretty much wrapped up. I think you had committed another 100,000 for it, correct?
Right, well, the 51,000 that's still sitting in the 2007 budget, that's just paying the final retainage on lift station 19.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't have any.
So your records are indicating that we're done with the 2007. Now, if I go to the investment report, I'm still showing $450,000 still left in the in revenue bond money, so I'm just wondering what the discrepancy is. You don't know?
No, I'm not sure.
That needs to be addressed. That's a lot of money just sitting there.
Any other questions on the bond project balance updates? Moving on to the construction progress.
In fact, Mr. Galvan, if you can get that on the next agenda for us to find out what the discrepancy is, please.
We'll
Thank
take
you.
care of it.
All right.
Charles?
Yeah, continue, let's see, okay, so the next item was the construction progress report, and it's, Quaco Pump Station. On that item, you know, with all this rain, we're still trying to get past one pipe repair for a pipe leak. But they're still on this rain delay. They would get the over there, even though it's been kind of nice and dry over here. It's kind of a different story, you know, just barely going to over Los Fresnos. And so the air conditioning, HVAC, the install got done before this last rain event that came up. And so right now we're estimating the project completion by the end of November. And the painting work includes the electrical, which is painting with that AC get installed, moving and doing the new pump startup, which we can't do until we fix the pipe leak. Relocating that pump from the old pump station to the new pump station, and then restoring our actuator for the limit torque valve at Reservoir 4, and then getting all of our SCADA back in service at both at Reservoir 4 and moving it to the new pump station at Guates, and then doing demolition of the old pump stations, final site work, and general cleanup. So that's what's pending. So we're almost there. Just again, we're just being delayed further by some rain at this point. Moving on to lift station number 19, we did our final walkthrough yesterday, and they've addressed a bunch of those items. The only item that's pending is that pump number 2. We need to repair the cable, and one part, kind of a shield that we need to install a new cable, has a 1 to 3 week delivery time. So that's really the only thing that's holding us up from doing a final acceptance at the lift station. But I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look out there. Things look pretty decent, but it's already running. Once that second pump gets installed, we'll basically accept the lift station and, you know, be done with that project.
Awesome.
That's where we're sitting there. For water plant 2 improvements, we did schedule the generator startup on October 16th. And when we opened up the control panel for the generator, we found out it was infested with rats.
Oh.
And they had done a lot of damage that forced us to cancel startup and reorder some wire harnesses and some materials. So we got a PO issued to Lofton this Monday for the replacement parts, which should be getting here, you know, by Monday. And once those replacement parts come in, then we can do our startup of the generator and finally get this thing finished out.
Do we have any cats we can take out there?
Yeah, we just need to make sure we plug our electrical conduits and protect the site. and then we did do the rat poison and catch that, you know, after we saw the infestation. But you know, it was pretty bad. But and then the other part of it, that's the only thing we did. We completed the electrical shutdown and got all the wiring pulled and terminated that was involved with our electrical shutdown at the same period. And the only thing holding us up on the generator is getting these new harnesses that were eaten by the rats.
Yikes. Yes.
The rats are coming in through the conduit.
Yes.
Well, I've been told you can take those holes and pack them with steel wool. I don't know if it works.
It can work. There's ways to seal that conduit, whether, I don't know the right term, a fire stop or something, but you can put seals in that conduit that'll not allow those.
You don't want to get it too packed. If you ever got to pull that wire, you're in trouble, Bubba.
Exactly. So it's finding the right. So steel wool.
That's what I've heard. It's a cheap try.
I got a question. Those panels came with those nests in them, already in there, already closed?
I mean, there's no telling. I mean,
what kind of rats are they?
Well, let's see, there was, I mean, the bigger ones scurried away, but we did have about 6 or 7 babies in a bucket that we just exposed in the sun and let them die out, and they're about this big.
How long have those panels been there? So they already have babies and everything?
Well, I mean, the generator was delivered to the site in May, And because of that arc flash, it's been sitting there without a startup all this time. And then October 16th, probably the first time we opened up the control panel inside the generator, and it was just infested. The rest have been there for a while.
Well, you know, those rats can squeeze into anywhere, you know, how they're flexible.
Yeah. It's scary how much they can eat and destroy. That's where we're at. And I guess getting on to the painting, we do have FASCO scheduled for October 27th, so we should have a nice new paint job by the time our ceremony comes out November 8th.
Done about the floor, right?
Yes, they're going to do the crack repair and resurface it to have it, you know, as it was originally intended.
Very good.
That's scheduled before the ceremony.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Moving to item 14, Director of Operations report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, I just had an update on the Luis wastewater plant, the theft that we had. We did get a check-in from TML. The original was for $7,200 minus $500 deductible, so we got $67.71.79 was the total check we got back.
There was in the news that they caught some thieves that were breaking into different places up the valley, stealing copper from several buildings. And they mentioned on there that this was an organized group of people that knew what they were doing, and they worked different shifts. And we were starting to wonder if that was the same group of thieves that did us over here.
They were pros.
Yeah, we'd have to follow up with the police. I can follow up with the sheriff's department and see if they found anything. I know I saw earlier in the week, I think they hit some of our mission, they hit a navigation point.
They hit irrigation district number 6. I saw it on TV, and then Hidalgo County, and they did the same thing. They cut through the fence and shut all the power off and left it down.
What they showed there looked a little bit more messier than what they did here. So they left wires hanging out over here. They didn't leave anything.
They got more experience by the time they got here.
So we're out in the woods.
Good deal.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Moving to item 15, audit, interim finance director report, audit report.
Last meeting, you all requested an audit committee.
Yes.
I talked to the auditors. They're open for the first week of December.
Okay.
Anytime that you would like, any day, anytime.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving to item 16, executive session permitted by the Open Meetings Act, VTCA Government Code, Section 551001, at sequence under Section 551071, 1A, consultation with attorney, Section 551074, personnel matters, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to a general manager. This time, can we please go into executive session at 6:29 p.m.?
So move.
Break.
Motion made by Mr. Keplinger, seconded by Mr. Thomas, and we will go into a 5-minute recess before we resume.
Yeah, we got
Motion to adjourn is never under question.
No,
We got
and
the item.
the item needs to...
Oh, okay.
Is there any
Not according to Robert.
motion with regard to the item?
No action.
No action taken at this time.
No, okay.
No action taken, but I'd like to say I like seeing the board, the staff here supporting their general manager. I like it. Thank you.
Is that what you guys are doing?
Absolutely.
I thought you were my bodyguards. I'm gonna get rid of.
There's...
I like seeing them here supporting.
Yes.
I like that.
There's no action taken on the item, and there's a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:25 p.m.
Before y'all be
Yes.
you know, I have an election coming up.
Yes.
I wanted to do...
When?
Oh, really? I didn't know. Was that you, the guy on them signs I see up and down the highway?
I wanted to find out if the board would be willing to allow me to bring some suitors for this job, so you can meet them, and then actually they have to apply for me, you know. There's been several attorneys that I have put on notice that if I get elected, this will be open or not, and
Well,
I've had nothing but, for 17 years, I've worked for the board, and
long?
But it's been a good ride.
How long?
17.
No wonder we're in trouble all the time. Hey,
Well, you know what, our policy dictates we go through RFQs, but you're more than welcome to bring
Well,
anybody.
You will have,
Yeah.
some kind of, and it may be, I don't know when's the next meeting.
The 12th of November?
Oh. Well, by then I should know.
We'll know, yeah.
Yeah, you'll know.
So,
Oh, you'll know by then for sure.
well, but I know several of the candidates, and, if you allow me, I would like to put my 2 cents somewhere, see what, because I'm familiar with their work. I'm familiar with their
Integrity?
knowledge of specific areas of the law that I think would enhance and would benefit the district.
And integrity?
Okay. Yeah, there's one person that knows the employment law, and you probably need a lot of that too. Probably the, business stuff. But employment law is always a good thing in organizations such as these. And so, anyway, I thought I'd mention that to you and get your temperature on that. If it's possible, I'd like to do that.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
I also like to thank all the staff for being here and obviously for all of their dedication to the Water District, and thank you to the board as well. So look forward to continually working aggressively ahead. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 7:27 p.m.